Alrighty guys, so if you saw my last video about this at all, it was the V-Star 1100 Classic drive shaft issues. This one, my drive shaft snapped. Fortunately, other people get lucky and the nut just comes loose. They can put the nut back on with some Loctite or drill a hole and stake it. A couple other options. Unfortunately, mine had broke and I was actually able to get the piece out of there. So let me just show you what that piece looked like. I do have it in my toolbox here. So if I recall correctly, we had this piece here, oops, the washer. I'm pretty sure that the washer was off of this bike if I remember correctly, which would go on the end of the shaft, and then you had the nut. And you can see the shaft is actually still in the nut, and you can see a little bit of damage to it from kind of tumbling around in the U-joint there as it broke apart. And you can see it's a fairly clean break on the shaft actually. But the weird part is I don't see anything that looks like it would have caused a crack or anything. That looks like it just more or less failed as a weak point. And like I said, I was riding real nice. I wasn't riding the bike hard. I wasn't on the throttle, and it actually snapped as I was decelerating. I was just coasting, letting off the throttle, and wasn't doing anything major or anything like that. Just like a lot of other people, it's always on the decel, it seems to be. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to do what people call the wiki-fix, which is where we get a nice flat surface on the shaft, and we just drill and tap a hole and put a bolt with a washer and a lock nut, or a washer and a lock washer, maybe some Loctite. We'll see how all that kind of goes once we get it apart. I'm not going to video this entire thing like I wanted because I just don't have the time to sit here and video it, but I thought I've already started, and then I remembered I was going to try to do a video because a lot of people were asking if I've done the fix yet and how to do it. And I don't see any videos that explain how to do this. So this is just going to be my way of doing it based off what I've read online. Obviously, there is no correct fix for this other than you remove the entire engine and transmission, take it all apart, put brand new parts in, put it all back together, and go that route. So this video is strictly for informational and entertainment purposes. Anything you do beyond this is all on your own risk assessment. I'm not responsible for any of that, so I'm not a qualified Yamaha V-Star mechanic. So again, this is not the proper way to fix it, but it is the way a lot of people do. So it is up to you how you end up fixing your bike and getting everything done. So what I've started with is my pipes are still hot, so I'm not going to take those off yet. And I don't think I'll need to, but you certainly can if you want, because it would make the job a lot easier. But there's going to be two bolts here and here. Those are going to hold your brake caliper on. Now, I just did rear brakes on this recently, so everything came apart nice and easy. The bolts weren't too tight or anything. You can see they got nice new pads on there yet, so that's good. I would hope so, since I just did them and I don't even have 1,000 miles on them. Then there's a bolt here, and I'm just kind of playing this by ear. I don't know exactly which bolts to take out. I'm just kind of looking and going as I go. And I believe the next ones I'm going to have to take out are these two nuts here. That looks like it'll split the end of the arm here. I do have it on the jack, and I do have it strapped down to the jack just to be on the safe side. I'm going to put one more strap on the back as I get closer so the bike doesn't like tip forward on me, because once I pull the swing arm and the wheel off of here, we're going to have a lot less weight back here, and the bike could potentially tip forward and fall off the jack. So I will get another supporting strap on the back half as I get a little farther. Then we're going to come around to this side here, and we're going to loosen that nut right there. We're going to take out these few bolts. Looks like there should be 4 of them. And while I'm here, I'll probably change this rear fluid. I don't need to video that. That's pretty explanatory. And I'm going to have to do a little bit of research to figure out exactly how this shaft comes apart. I don't know offhand if it just kind of slides out of here or how that part works, so I will have to look at that. And then we are going to pull this side cover off here, which is all these Allen hex head bolts. We're going to pull those off, and then that'll allow us access to where the shaft is a little bit. And there might be a couple more things that we're going to have to take off. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, get all these bolts out, and like I said, we will show you as I go how things come along. All right, bear with me if my phone tips over here. I don't have the best stand right now. But we do have all the bolts out. It looks like the shaft is going to just slide right out for the moment. And I'm assuming the main reason is because it's broken, which is going to allow that entire U-joint to come apart. Hopefully, we will see how that goes. When you slide it off, there's going to be 2 washers, if you can see these in my hand, that go here and here. So they're going to go between the swing arm and the housing for the rear differential. So make sure you don't lose those. I would presume there's a reason they're there, so it is probably important that those get back in there. So we're going to see if we can get the wheel the rest of the way off here at all. I might have to jack the bike up a little bit more and kind of play around a little bit here. I also did remove my saddlebags. Same thing, just to give myself more room to work with. Fortunately, these ones come off really easy. So we're just going to see if we can also wiggle this brake caliper out of the way a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so our shaft is separated from the U-joint. So that's why that part came out up there nice and easy. And again, you always want to be very careful because you don't want your bike to tip over on you. It's not fun when that happens. I really should have an additional person here, but unfortunately I don't have that, so I'm doing my best to work with what I've got. I may need a second person when I go to put that back in. Ideally, it would help if I had a better jack and lift and everything, but once again, I'm kind of working with what I've got. Okay, so there we've got the entire rear wheel assembly off the bike, and it's actually quite heavy. So this is what's going to be all your weight on the rear of the bike. Fortunately, this end of the shaft and everything does seem to look pretty good. So that's good. We're going to set this off to the side for now. Out of the way. Oops. Good thing those were broken parts off of a lawnmower. I don't need those parts. So, with that, we actually now have the rear wheel removed. So that was much easier than I anticipated it to be. In regards to getting the wheel off. I thought it was going to be a lot more work than that to pull the rear wheel off, so I'm glad that was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, so that makes that easy. So with that, I'm going to get that side cover pulled off there and then see what we got to look at from there. Alrighty, so you can see we definitely got a lot more stuff apart here. So we're trying to get to right here, which I think a lot of people refer to as like the cage or something like that. Anyway, behind this little rubber cover is where our U-joint is. And I might be able to rotate it by hand. Yep, I think so. Well, it's hard to see at the moment because I just don't have enough hands to do it. It's a little bit of a dirty job. So here we got our fuel pump and stuff. You're gonna want to be careful because you will leak a little bit of fuel. So we had to take off a couple of our fuel lines. We got one there, another one runs up here. Obviously, you're gonna want to turn your fuel off at the tank if you have that on your bike. This here is gonna be your speed sensor. So this will go right around up in here somewhere. And it's just held on with one little screw, but you're gonna want to be careful because since this one had never been out before up until this whole issue happened, so this one's been like this for a little bit now ever since I discovered the issue. When I initially went to take this out, it cracked the housing right there. And a new speed sensor is actually really expensive for this darn thing. So I've been able to get by with leaving it like this and just being real careful when I put it back in, and it still works. But just be careful of that so you don't snap yours. You might not be left with much choice. And I think the reason for that is this little insert here, bushing, whatever you want to call it, spacer, gets kind of stuck into this plastic. And what happens is when you go to loosen the nut or the screw or bolt, whatever you want to call it, it actually twists that little bushing, and you can see that's probably why that cracked. And you can see mine is just about broken all the way off. So I have to be very careful with this one when I go to reinstall it. Otherwise, I will have to wire a new one in. And it's not... Oh, I guess it is on a plug. So I might be okay with that if I have to do that, I guess. I was going to say, if you got to cut it and splice it, that's not a lot of fun. Here we've got, I think just some sort of breather assembly, PCV kind of deal. I don't know exactly what it is. But connected to that, you will have this piece here, which will go there. There's going to be one bolt right there, a 10mm or 3/8 socket should do that. And then there's going to be 2 screws that hold this little piece on. Those are just going to be your little Phillips ones. These are all the Allen screws that held on the decorative cover. In this case, mine was chrome. These 3 little screws here, they're real short, 10mm ones in case you forget where they go. These hold the fuel pump on. I'll show you the bracket for that in a second. This little one is going to be your bolt for the speed sensor that I just showed you. This big pile of bolts here is everything that was holding the rear wheel on. And then these ones here are what hold on the plastic assembly right here. And you got to kind of fight with that to get it out of there. So it'll be a little interesting to try and get that part back together. But before that plastic piece comes out, you're going to have to come over to the other side of the bike. And you're going to have a 10mm bolt there, there, and right there. So you're going to want to take those 3 out, and then you'll be able to carefully wiggle that piece out. So the next thing is, in order to get to this, I need to get this housing off of here. So in order to get this housing off, I believe it is attached. Yep, it is welded to the swing arm. So here's the part that I was hoping I could get by without doing, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. So this is where the swing arm is going to have to come off so that I can get in here and get access to that shaft. So it looks like I might have to take these bolts off here. I don't know if those are part of it or not. We will find out. Obviously there's going to be a bolt here, and I think that's actually about it. We got whatever bolt must go right across here, and then our couple little, I don't know, stabilizers or something, maybe might be what they're called. So I'm going to see if I can get those couple bolts out, see if there's any other bolts that hold it on. We'll slide that out of there, and if I do come across any other bolts beyond, obviously the big main one and your couple little stabilizer links or suspension, I don't know what you call them. If there's anything beyond that, I'll let you know where any of the other bolts are. So with that, I'm going to get it off, and we'll get on with the project. Okay, so we did definitely have to do quite a bit more work here, tear down. I ended up having to take the exhaust pipes off, so I think while I'm in here, I'm just going to change my oil filter. I usually do the oil filter once every 2 years, just like my stepdad did, just because you have to take the pipes off, but we would change oil every year. So I think while I'm in here, I'll go pick up a filter. I'm just going to change that filter. I've already got the pipes off. I might as well do it while it's apart. We can see we had to also remove this plastic cover so we can get right here to the bolt for the swing arm, which might be a special size or socket. So I'll have to see what I can do for that. See if I got something to fit there. But yeah, we had to take a lot more stuff off. So there's some relays and stuff up here that you got to take off of the plastic. The rubber just slides onto these tabs. So you got to take a screwdriver from under the seat and kind of pry it off of there so you don't rip them. Otherwise, they're just going to have to sit there if you do rip it. Be careful with your exhaust bolts, because this one gave me a heck of a time. The hex head stripped out. I had to pound a larger hex head into it to make it work. It's just what happens sometimes with the heat and stuff, and that one might have got put on too tight last time. That could be what happened. Hard to say, a few different reasons. So just be careful of that, because if you can't get that out, you're going to have a heck of a time if you really wreck the bolt to the point where you can't get it out at all. So try not to do that. But yeah, so now that we've got all this stuff out of the way, I'm going to see if I can get this swing arm off of here, which once again, fortunately, doesn't look like it's connected to anything else except for the bolts right here that hold this little extra piece on. Okay, so we got the swing arm all the way off there. Sure enough, it was just those couple bolts once we were able to access them. The reason we had to take everything off on that other side was so we could get to the main cross bolt right here that comes all the way across. So it's just a lot of little stuff that allows you to get to the big stuff. Otherwise, this project is not that bad at all so far. Obviously, this is still kind of in my way. I might end up pulling those lines. I'm trying to avoid it because I don't like to pull off rubber lines if I don't have to. But from here, you can now see the entire issue here. So yeah, that just slides right out of the drive shaft there. That goes onto the, or slides right out of the U-joint, and that goes to the axle for the rear differential. Now you can kind of see where that's broken in there. There we go. So that just slides off like that, actually. That was almost too easy. I was surprised that that never slid off before, because I did try with a pry bar a couple times to see how easily that would slide off, and it didn't, but that's all right. So with that, we're going to set this aside. You're going to want to do your best to keep track of all your parts, and definitely be careful at this point, because if you're using a jack like this, the front of the bike is going to want to sit on the ground, which you can see it is right now. Again, I do still have my straps on there. I should try to get another one back here. There's just no good way to do it without it being in my way at the moment. So there is that. So it's kind of a big mess, but I'm just trying to be careful here. When you take the rear swing arm off, you might have these little rubber spacer cap dealio washer things, I don't know what they are, come off of there. So try not to lose those either, because those are going to be important. You're going to want to keep those in place. And what's going to suck is when we're going to put everything back together, we'll be trying to get all these little rubber things back on. So you can see like how that's got the slots there. That's because that sits on those plastic tabs I was talking about on some of the plastic shields there. So with that, I'm going to see if I can grind this shaft down just a little bit to get a nice smooth surface. I'm going to go clean my hands so I don't get a bunch of dirt in here. I'm going to also see if I can find something to get around here to try to keep any metal shavings out of there, because what we're going to have to do is drill a hole right in the center, and then we're going to want to tap it with some threads and put our bolt in. So we're going to see how that part goes. Like I said, I'm going to try to cover this up so we hopefully don't get a bunch of metal shavings in there, because we really don't want metal shavings in there, since that also shares the same oil as the engine. So with that, I'm going to get my hands clean, take care of this. Hopefully I can drill a straight enough hole. It's going to be much easier said than it is done. But I guess it is what it is. Figure worst comes to worst, we can't break the broken thing, right? And at that point, if it doesn't go as planned, well, then I guess we'll pull the engine out and we'll put the swing arm and the rear wheel back on so we can roll it around. And we'll just have a frame and park it off to the side, take this all apart, get some parts ordered up to do that. Hopefully you don't need any special tools if that's the case. And if we get to that point, that'll be a whole different video. But I just thought I'd show at least up to this point so you can kind of figure out how to get everything apart. Hopefully that's helped. I will continue videoing after we get this done and see how everything goes. And we'll get her back together, hopefully. So hopefully this works and everything goes as it should. Okay. So you can see it's an old-fashioned incandescent work light, or halogen, I don't know, whatever the heck you call it. Just because I figure some light would be good so I can kind of see what I'm doing. So I got a little paper towel in there just to help prevent as much as I can from getting in there. Obviously I am going to change the oil quite a few times after this, probably at least 2 or 3 times. Run a little bit, change it, run a little bit, change it, and I will change the filter again later as well. But I got it ground down a little flatter, so hopefully that should help and give us a nice smooth surface to work with. And you can see I did put a center punch mark on there, about as center as I can hopefully get it. Hopefully that will work. I tend to struggle a little bit with drilling, so that can be tricky. So what you're going to want to do, if you haven't read online already, these are the bolts I bought. I believe they're grade 8 or something like that. M8 by 1 1/4 by 45. If I remember right, that was the size that the online thing said to get. I do have a washer and a lock washer as well. If I was smart, I should have probably actually just bought the mushroom head style, or the, I think it's called a flanged bolt. I don't know. But anyway, what we got here is we're going to start with our 1/8 inch drill bit. Then we're going to move up to 17/64, and then from there we should be able to tap it. I believe the 17/64 should be about the same size as this 8 by 1 1/4 thread. So hopefully that'll work. We're going to step it up a little bit. I think I have an extra bit or two laying around that should be in between these two sizes, so I might even go that route. The other thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to mark on the bit just how far in we need to go so that we don't go too deep. And I might not even need to go quite as deep as this whole bolt, so we will see about that. But with that, I'm going to get these out of the package here, get the drill, and we're going to use some cutting oil as well just to hopefully make the bit last, because we don't want the bit to snap in there. It's not a good day when you snap a drill bit, especially on something like this where you pretty much only get one shot, so do be careful. But we're going to get this done, and we're going to see how it turns out. I'll be back. All right, so fortunately, I think that went quite well. And in case you are interested in just seeing what it looks like, I mean, it's just a drilled hole. It's not like it's anything fancy. You can see it goes down to there. I actually didn't drill as deep as I thought I was going to. So with that, I started with a shallower hole, and I'm going to see how far in the bolt goes, and just kind of what I need, because I think I actually bought bolts that might be a little too long. So I'm going to go something a little bit shorter, I think. So I'm going to go to the store and get something shorter. But for the moment, I'm going to get this tapped. I'm going to make sure those bolts would work with that tap and that I've got the hole the right size and everything. And then from there, I'm going to go to the store. But otherwise, you can see, fortunately, it looks like the hole turned out pretty good. I would say it's fairly center. Not bad for eyeballing it. I wish it was slightly better, but I don't have the precision machinery and knowledge to get a perfectly straight hole. So hopefully that will work. I'm going to get the threads tapped here, and then we're going to go from there. All right, well, we were making progress right up to that point. So on top of not dragging your drill bit, don't break your tapping bit, or whatever you want to call it, thread tap, I don't know. Okay, well, fortunately, I mean, it's at least at the end there, so hopefully we can get her out of there. But that's going to take some creativity here, so that sucks, but I guess we'll see what we can do. All right, so very fortunately, I was able to carefully get my tap back out of there. I might have to drill the hole just a hair wider, but I don't want to, because I really want these threads to be as strong as possible. But seeing as that's all the farther I made it and the threads or the tap snapped like that, I might be trying to tap out a little too much at one time, or maybe it's not going perfectly straight. I'm not 100% sure. But as for the threads that are in there, you can see we grab our bolt and it threads in nice and good, so that's good. The problem is it just doesn't thread in far enough. Like I said, I'm still going to go get some shorter bolts, so I had to run to town anyways. So I'm going to run to town, get some more supplies, and we will be back. Okay, so I ended up taking it more apart. I'm just getting really frustrated here. I unfortunately am not having the best of luck today, and it's more than likely operator error. If I had to guess, my tap is probably not going in straight. So I don't know exactly what's going on here, but as you can see, maybe, broke a second tap. So I'm done for the night. I've got enough time into this thing right now, and I'm just getting frustrated. So it's time to step away, take a break for a little bit before I get any more fed up or frustrated with this. I'm just going to wait till tomorrow. There's a guy just around the corner here from my shop that runs a welding shop, so he does all sorts of metal work. I'm going to run up and ask him tomorrow if he's got any good ways to maybe get that tap out of there. Just because at this point, I don't know what else to do. The first one I was able to hammer out real easy with a screwdriver, but unfortunately this one, it's like it's stuck, which is odd because it was coming out easy before. I got it to twist a little ways, and then now it's like it's just randomly stuck. So I don't know what else to do here. I'm just going to talk to him, see if maybe there's something he can do, and if not, I'll have to try to put the wheel and stuff back on so I can at least move it around the shop here and pull the whole engine out, and we'll end up doing a drive shaft if I can't get him to help me, or if there's nothing he can do to help me in this case. I mean, it's already about halfway there, I would say, to doing this shaft, so it's probably not that much worse. I'm guessing what we can do is probably take the engine apart there and split the case open, and hopefully that would allow access to there, but I don't really know. I'm going to have to do some research on that. But once again, there's no videos on that as far as I know either, so there is no tutorial. But I'll talk to that guy tomorrow. We'll see what he can do for us. Hopefully he can help. Regardless, I will continue this tomorrow once we know whether or not he can help. Okay, so it's the next morning here. Obviously, slept overnight, took a break from this thing. The guy wasn't up at his shop this morning. He's closed because the city's redoing the sidewalk and stuff. So anyway, I wasn't able to get a hold of him, so I decided to just try again myself. I was able to finally get that thread tap back out of there. Went back to town, got yet another one. But anyways, I was able to finally get it out. Get it retapped, rust away, third time's the charm. So we've got a grade 8 30mm bolt, lock washer, flat washer, and then the big washer that was initially on there behind the original nut. So let's get this all back together, see what happens. Okay, so we're making progress. We've got the swing arm reinstalled. We've got some of our plastics back on. So what you're gonna wanna do is when you put this side back on, there's two little tabs there, and that holds the rubber on, which holds all that in place. This is your electrical connector for your speedometer and everything that goes under the gas tank. I did remove that to do the spark plugs. Turns out you do not have to do that. It is certainly easier, I guess, with it out of the way, but otherwise, these little covers here, one on this side, and then one on this side on the back for the back cylinder, they just pop right off, and then you can get right to the spark plug. With this one, because the crash bar is here, it makes it a little harder to get in there, so you're gonna want a swivel socket to do that. Be careful so you don't cross-thread those if you do the spark plugs at all. And then you can see for things like the fuel filter, I will get a new one of these, I just don't have one right now. And fortunately, that's easy enough to change. But you are gonna wanna make sure you get all that stuff reseated back onto the plastic like that. You're gonna have bolt here, and one more hiding kind of down right under there behind all this junk here. This here is your fuel pump. So same thing, that will go back on just like that, right on those plastic tabs. This here is going to be our speed sensor, so we'll make sure we get that put back in place, and we'll get all these wires kind of reseated back up where we need them so that we can get all this stuff back where it needs to go. And once again, do be careful when you take that bolt out, just because you can crack that housing. It's not the end of the world if you crack it, in theory, but it can be hard to get the speed sensor to sit just right. So just be cautious of that when you're doing that. Unfortunately on mine, this little rubber piece is broken. That holds the fuse assembly on, but otherwise that would also just go right up there. But we're gonna wait a second because I got a couple screws and stuff I gotta put back in there. Our tool kit will go back right here. We'll get our fuel lines run back down and hooked back up. And on this side, unfortunately, there is one bolt that I cannot remember where it goes. And that's this bolt. So I'm gonna have to figure out where that one goes. But otherwise, when you go to remove the plastics or reinstall them, you're gonna have a bolt here, here, right there, there. You're gonna have to take those two out, and then back in here, of course the exhaust pipe's in the way. There's just an extra connector, I don't know what it's for, that Yamaha just kind of stuffed in there. You're gonna have to pull the wire harness out of there, and there's one more bolt hiding back there. And same thing, you'll kind of want to wiggle that all out. Make sure you get all this stuff back in place so that it's not resting up here against where the exhaust is or anything. Make sure all your wires are run in the correct spots. Obviously, I'm going to have a lot of cleaning to do because this poor thing got covered in grease and oil here from this project. But with that, I'm going to finish getting everything hooked up here, wrapped up. We'll get the wheel back on, and we'll see where that puts us. Alrighty, so we've got the rear wheel just set back in place. I still have to bolt it up, as you can see. So what I did was I put my jack up a lot higher. Once again, you're going to want to be careful. I'm going to try and hurry this up because I don't want it sitting up this high for too long, just because obviously the potential for tipping over kind of thing. But what I did was I got it up high enough that I could kind of roll the wheel in behind the fender here. I put my knee underneath the tire, used my knee and my leg to lift the tire while obviously using my hands to try and guide it into place. And I left the transmission in neutral so that I could rotate the shaft to get the splines to line up. So with that, we're going to get her back together here real quick, get everything bolted on and snugged up. And once again, oops, I dropped one. If you remember when we took this apart, we had these couple washers that go on a couple bolts there. Don't forget to put those back in place. So I'm going to make sure I put these back in right now before I forget, and we'll be back. All right, and just like that, we're all back together. That definitely took a little bit of wiggling stuff around. When you go to put the rear wheel back on, don't tighten all the bolts until you have all the bolts at least started, your shaft lined up, all that good stuff. But before you get too far ahead of yourself like I kept doing, you're going to want to come over to this side here. And do not forget about this bracket here. Otherwise, it's going to be dangling down. You're going to slide the wheel up. You're going to have it half bolted together, and then you're going to realize you need to slide it back out in order to rotate this upper bracket here into place. And then as well, the other thing you want to do before you slide the tire all the way in is make sure that you have your brake caliper at least sitting in line here. What I found was easier was, since I had the exhaust off, I took out the 2 bolts that hold this little crossbar on here. It's just an extra bar that is a mounting bracket for the exhaust, so it's not a huge deal. It's easy to take off. It's those 2 bolts, comes right out, and that opens all that up so you can easily move that caliper off to the side here until you're ready for it. You might have to squeeze it back in just a little bit in order to slide it back over your disc here. But with that, we've got everything back together. We've got a new oil filter in. We kind of mess on the floor, of course, and oil all over the pipes and stuff, unfortunately. So we're not going to run it for long because it's probably going to be smoky. But we got the battery charged up. Now we're going to turn the fuel back on. Okay, let's see what happens here. Hopefully our battery's charged enough. Alrighty, so that gives us our initial start. Everything sounds healthy, just like it should offhand. I think I might need to adjust my clutch a little bit, because as you notice, when it's up in the air like this, my rear wheel does spin just a little bit. So with that, let's put the kickstand up. We'll idle it down here. And that's the other thing, is with the clutch all the way in, our rear tire still spins. So with that, bear with me here. We'll have to set the camera down. Alrighty, so with that, obviously you want to be careful once again, because with the bike leaning like this and stuff, and not in other parts of the house, strictly for demonstration purposes. So I no longer hear the whine. Now with that, I won't know until I get it off the stand here and out on the road and I go road test it. So with that, we'll shut her off. We'll call that a success, I believe, for the moment. I will let you know just as soon as I get everything off and I can go road test it. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to really video while I road test, so I'll just have to do a recap when I get back. But I don't hear the whining noise now, which is good. Prior to doing this job, I could put it up on the jack stand like this, and when I would decelerate, I could hear that transmission whine. I don't hear it right now, so I'm going to take that as a promising thing. But with that, let's get her down, go road test, see what we got, confirm our results. All right, so the road test went fantastic. There's not even a hint of the whine anymore, so that's good. No sounds of bad bearings or anything, so fortunately we didn't cause any damage there. So I'm pretty confident that this will actually work, and I think a lot of people are right. It probably actually is a stronger fix than the original design. Obviously, what I always recommend with anything like this, on top of following your manufacturer recommendations and service manuals and such, is always go back and double check the important things like these bolts, your rear nut here, all that stuff, especially on the rear wheel, because obviously you would not want the rear wheel coming loose while you're trying to ride down the road. That would be not so good of a day. So I will make sure that I come back and double check these, make sure everything's still tight. I'm going to take a look at everything, make sure everything still looks good. It's kind of naked right now because I don't have my saddlebags back on yet, because I didn't want to put everything back together if I was still going to have an issue. So now with that, now that this thing's been sitting for a while, before I could finally fix it here, and it's all covered in dust, we're going to get her cleaned up, polished up, make her look nice again, and we're going to probably go for some rides hopefully soon here before we run out of season. But yeah, it was not so bad of a job to do, not as bad as I thought it was going to be. You don't really need anything too fancy for tools. I was able to do this. I used some power tools, but other than that, this is a job that you could pretty much do with common hand tools, other than needing a drill, obviously, to drill your hole in the shaft there. But other than that, I think this will work pretty good and should hopefully last a long time. The only thing that I did not like about this job is because we have so many different size Allen screws for everything. I'm not entirely sure why Yamaha likes to use Allens instead of just standard bolts. These ones I can understand because they're a decorative cover, so they're not really structural. But things like the seats and stuff really makes a tricky job, so I'm actually going to have to go and get some new bolts for those because the head's stripped out a little bit, and I don't want them to cause a problem later if I ever need to take anything off again. So I will go get new bolts for things like the exhaust and the seats and such, just to have new bolts there. Other than that, we got new spark plugs in, clean the air filter, change the engine oil, put a new oil filter in, change the rear differential fluid, or strip gearbox, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So this thing should be ready to go for quite a while. Hopefully that helped. If you do have any other questions, obviously feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will try to get back to you if there's any help that you need and it's something I can help you with. Hopefully this helped. Thanks for watching.